So my last video, I talked a little bit about some of the emotions that I'm going through right now. And one of them is it's the 20th year since my oldest daughter passed away. And one of the ways that I deal with grief is to talk about it. And so I'm going to want to tell you guys a little bit about Sydney today. Um, she was born in 2002 and suffered from failure to thrive and fell into a coma and was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder called methylmalonic acidemia, or MMA for short. Um, just realized how bad the lighting was. MMA is the inability to process four of the amino acids that are found in food. And so the metabolic process is like a chain, enzymes that are links in a chain. And she was missing one of those links. And so instead of, the full metabolic process of these four amino acids, they would turn into a toxin in her body. And she had to be on one of the side effects of this genetic disorder is global developmental delays. She was fine cognitively. She was 3 years and 4 months old to the day when she passed, and she could tell you her colors and numbers and count and shapes and all of that stuff, appropriate for a 3-year-old. But she had global motor delays. She could walk, but she had low muscle tone. So she was on a few medications, one to help flush that toxin out of her body, and a couple, she had very severe reflux, which is typical in kids with the disorder. And so a couple medications to help with that. She had a feeding tube, so a G tube, it goes straight into the stomach. And so she had a medically modified formula. So there was like a regular, like baby toddler food formula, and then a medically modified one that had those protein, that had those four amino acids taken out. And so she would get extra protein. She ate very little by mouth. She loved sucking on pickles. That was a weird thing. Loved sucking on pickles. And every once in a while, she always sat at the table with us. But one time Thanksgiving, she was 2 years old. She grabbed my sister's corn on the cob off of her plate and just started eating it. And we were like, what? Okay. One time she grabbed a French fry and dipped it in salsa. That was also bizarre, but whatever, it was weird. Anyways, she was in a special ed preschool. From the time she turned 3, she got feeding therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, got lots of therapies in order to help her function the way a proper 3-year-old, a typical 3-year-old would. So she had a lot of hospital stays. Not anytime you get sick, but when people get sick and they don't bring in enough calories, they can become what's called, we have metabolic, where your body takes the food that it's given and uses it for the body. When you don't take in enough calories, you become catabolic, and that's where you break down your own system to use for calories. And I don't need any of you fitness people coming at me with, well, technically that's not right. It was been 20 years since she passed, and I'm saying all this that I remember from 20 years ago. But the idea is that if you become catabolic, the first thing your body goes for is muscle to get that protein before it goes to fat. And protein is pure muscle, or muscle is pure protein. And so she would get, that would be more protein than her body can handle, and she'd have to be hospitalized. They got very special IVs ordered for her that are amino acid modified, so that way her body would still be getting the protein when she couldn't keep anything down by mouth. And so she spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital. She was hospitalized for teething. You know how kids get, they can get really bad runny noses and stuff when they teeth, and all the, the postnasal drip, too much mucus in her stomach. She threw up. It was called a metabolic crisis. She went into crisis and she had to be hospitalized for teething. And it was like 3 or 4 days in the hospital to restabilize her. But yeah, that was always a handful of those little hospital stays. Um, Her final hospital stay, she went into the hospital December 18th. We could tell that she was off and going into crisis. She was sick, she was throwing up. Um, and she was so bad. Like our local hospital, we would go there most of the time. We live in Southern California and have Kaiser, and we go to the Kaiser in Anaheim. Um, but her medication, the medication she was on to help flush the toxins out of her body, was called Carnitor was a name brand, or Carnitine. Um, and if she couldn't keep anything down, we couldn't give that to her by mouth. It had to be by IV. And it was against the law, at least here in California, or it was 20 years ago, to administer IV carnitine um, outside of an ICU. And so she was really sick, and they realized that she needed IV carnitine. And so they airlifted her to Kaiser Sunset, the hospital up in Hollywood, that's across the street from um, the Children's Hospital up there. That was the second time she'd been airlifted. First time was when she was first diagnosed. Um, and they put her up in Kaiser Sunset. And then the second time she was airlifted was the last time she was in the hospital when she passed. Um, and so they land on the roof of the Children's Hospital, and take an ambulance across the street um, to Kaiser. But in the beginning it looked like just a miscellaneous hospital stay. But they realized that the infection that she had was viral septicemia. And the way it's been explained to me since is different than the way it was explained to me originally, but it's a severe viral infection. There is a 50% chance of death with no underlying conditions with viral septicemia. It can be bacterial, and then they treat it with the proper antibiotics. But in this case, it was viral. It was the same. She was, like I said, in special ed preschool, and the same like cold or flu bug that all of the other kids had. But because she was immunocompromised, had a weakened immune system, she went septic. At that point, they prepared us for the worst. They said she had a really low chance of making it through. They moved her in the ICU to a bed with a lot of sunshine, because sunshine is medicine. And they're like, this is the best that we can do. They gave her there were a couple of antivirals available then. They were giving her those. They gave her a couple of antifungals. They gave her a couple different, there's gram negative, gram positive, and some other classifications of antibiotics. But they gave her a couple of antibiotics just to make sure, just to see, make sure. But all symptoms pointed to it being viral. So my husband at the time, now my ex-husband, we spent daytime shifts at the hospital, and then we spent the day at the hospital, and then at nighttime we'd take shifts. We had a room at the Ronald McDonald House. It was across the street, and in the long run, she was in the hospital for 10 days before she passed away. We were in the hospital over Christmas, and so sorry, my treadmill's making noise. I just got off of it. Yeah, and so that's why Christmas is hard for me. And as I've done healing, I've been able to recognize and mitigate some of the emotions. I mean, the last couple years, I actually haven't had much of a problem. And so it's kind of weird that it's hit me so bad this year. And I don't know if it's because it is the 20th anniversary or what. It's not like I sit there and consciously keep track, you know. But it did, yeah, it is hitting me hard this year. So I'm practicing some self compassion. I am taking things slowly to make sure I do everything I feel like I need to be doing. You know, I'm not rushing through my morning routines. I'm making sure I get my meds. I'm making sure that I eat well. Except for yesterday, I did not eat well. There was leftover Thanksgiving pie, cherry pie. Yeah, we won't talk about that. Anyways, you know, doing my best to pare down extra things that I don't need. Um, and so far, it seems to be helping. You know, the last few days, I feel like, well, I guess except for yesterday, um, the last few days, I feel like I have been on an upward trend. And so that's good. It's important. It's so important to take care of yourself when you're going through periods like this where you're dealing with triggers and trauma and stuff. And um, I'll probably go visit her graveside. Um, I don't think I've taken my new husband there. He's not new. I mean, it's been 4.5 years, but I'm not sure he's ever. I've ever taken him to a gravesite, and so I might do that. We'll see. I do have a we have a trunk. Maybe I'll make another video about that, where I keep some of her stuff, and that's like in our living room. Um, but yeah, that's my story of my Sydney. She was one of those kids, you know, a lot of special needs kids just have really amazing personalities and are just always happy. And that was Sydney. She was just brought light to everyone around her. And that was one of the hardest things, is that light was gone. And yeah, so I'll probably come in and talk a little bit more because, you know, I'm a verbal processor and this is a little, you know, therapeutic for me. But yeah, that's my story.